hidden in a sealed envelope for over 2 decades. A single line in Princess Diana's private correspondence was never meant to be seen by Camilla. But when she found it buried in a royal archive, it wasn't the loving, motherly note she expected. It was a clause. One so powerful, so strategically written, it could obliterate Prince Harry's royal status with a single legal maneuver. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For years, the palace insisted that everything Diana left behind had been catalogued, sanitized, and sealed away in the name of closure. Yet the monarchy has always lived by an unspoken truth. Nothing truly disappears. The envelope surfaced during a routine internal review, a quiet process meant to tidy loose ends before a new chapter of royal authority took shape. It bore a simple instruction, precise and unsettling in its restraint, addressed to William, restricted by time, and never intended for anyone else's eyes. That alone should have stopped the process. It didn't. Curiosity, duty, or perhaps something colder carried it forward. The letter inside was not sentimental, it was deliberate. Written to Diana's solicitor, it referenced a protective clause drafted with foresight that now feels almost prophetic. There were no grand declarations, no accusations, just language sharpened by experience and fear. Diana had learned how power worked inside the institution, how affection could be conditional, how loyalty could be tested. This clause was her answer to that knowledge, a safeguard designed to activate only if certain lines were crossed. Camilla's reaction was immediate and internal. She was not meant to read this. She knew it, and yet the words rooted themselves in her mind with terrifying clarity. The clause spoke of forfeiture, of consequences tied not to blood but to behavior, of a line that if breached would strip Prince Harry of the very privileges that defined his royal identity, not temporarily, not symbolically, forever. It was the kind of language that doesn't shout because it doesn't need to. What made the discovery even more disturbing was the context. This letter was believed to have been destroyed during a post-Diana security purge, a moment when anything deemed destabilizing was quietly erased in the name of unity. Its survival suggested either an oversight or an intentional preservation by someone who understood its future value. And now, decades later, it had landed in Camilla's hands at the precise moment Harry's relationship with the monarchy appeared most fragile. There was no visible anger, no dramatic response, no impulsive reaction. Instead, there was calculation. Camilla understood documents. She understood timing. And she understood that this was not merely a relic of the past, but a dormant instrument of authority. The question wasn't whether the clause could be used. It was whether it should be, and what kind of reckoning would follow if it was. Because the moment that envelope was opened, the monarchy's carefully managed narrative fractured just enough to let something dangerous through. And to understand how Diana ever came to write something so consequential, we must step back into the final period of her life, when fear, foresight, and maternal instinct collided in ways no one fully grasped at the time. But to understand the weight of Diana's hidden clause, we need to uncover the true events that led her to draft it in the first place. They called her the People's Princess, but behind palace walls, Diana was a chess player with a wounded heart and a pen sharper than any crown in the months before her death. Diana wasn't just writing love letters, she was rewriting royal futures, including Harry's. What the world saw in Diana's final months was only a fraction of the truth. Behind the public appearances and whispered romances, Diana was haunted by a single, unshakable fear that the institution she had fought so hard to escape would one day reclaim her sons not out of love, but out of necessity. The monarchy did not forget, and it did not forgive. And Diana knew that if she could not protect her boys in life, she would have to do it in death. That fear became the fuel for a set of conversations few knew were taking place, private legal briefings held in quiet chambers, miles from the cameras. These weren't about divorce settlements or public image. They were about legacy, control, and contingency. She didn't trust the system, not after what it had done to her. And as her relationship with Charles officially dissolved, So too did her illusions about what the monarchy would do to protect or manipulate her sons. William, as the heir, would be protected by structure. But Harry was different. Spare, emotional, unpredictable. Diana feared that Harry would be loved only as long as he obeyed. And so she posed the question no royal mother had ever dared ask aloud: what if my son says no to the crown? The answer came in the form of legal language. Her advisors, cautious but intrigued, proposed an idea that would seem radical to most royals but utterly rational to her. A clause, conditional, binding, hidden. The clause of separation, as it came to be known in those legal circles, was chilling in its simplicity. If Harry ever formally separated himself from crown duty by title, by commitment, or by public defiance, then the clause could trigger a cascade of consequences. Not out of punishment, but out of protection. It would sever access to certain privileges and entitlements that, in Diana's view, could be turned against him. The monarchy could no longer dangle status as a chain around his neck. She was rewriting the rules to unshackle her son from a system that had shackled her. But it wasn't just Harry she feared for. Diana had long suspected that Camilla's influence would rise faster and stronger than the public would ever accept. She knew Charles's loyalty. She saw the long game being played. And so, the clause was written with Camilla in mind, not as a direct attack, but as a shield against what she believed would be inevitable. A second queen, a new narrative, a slow erasure of the woman who had once worn the crown of public love. Diana's clause became her ghost in the machine. Once drafted, the clause was not filed with palace legal staff. It was placed in trust, sealed, secured, and overseen by a solicitor with no ongoing royal affiliations. Someone Diana trusted precisely because he had no skin in the game. And then, like so many of her final plans, it was buried under layers of secrecy. The solicitor retired quietly. The clause vanished into a private vault. No one expected it to resurface, and certainly not in the hands of the one person Diana had feared would misuse it. What Diana wrote in that clause would remain hidden, until Camilla took one unexpected step that brought everything crashing into the open. Was it an innocent archival review or a deliberate search for leverage? When Camilla opened that sealed folder, some say she gasped, others claim she smiled, because within Diana's words lay not just legal firepower, but a way to redefine the royal line. Camilla had spent years enduring Prince Harry's open disdain for the institution she now helped command. The memoirs, the interviews, the barbed glances, it all chipped away at the crown's carefully managed facade. But beneath her public composure, frustration brewed, not simply at the attacks, but at the threat they posed to the legacy she and Charles had built. Harry was no longer just a rogue prince. He was a destabilizing force, one who seemed determined to unravel the very threads that held the monarchy together. And for Camilla, who had once been branded the outsider, it struck a nerve. So when a legal advisor quietly suggested revisiting old trust files ahead of a confidential succession review, she didn't hesitate. At least not outwardly. It began as a standard procedure, at least on the surface. Documents long archived under layers of restricted access were pulled at her request, categorized and indexed by the palace's archivist. But then came the strange request to unseal a box that had been marked Legacy Trust Restricted Review. The archivist hesitated. This wasn't protocol. These were documents believed to have been sealed by Diana's legal team with the explicit understanding they wouldn't be touched without direct authorization from her sons. But authorization came anyway, signed not by William, but by another hand, one backed by silent pressure and institutional hierarchy. And so, against his better judgment, the archivist complied. The folder inside was thin, its contents deceptively simple. But the moment Camilla began reading, the temperature in the room shifted. The clause was surgical. No emotion, no sentimentality. It outlined, in stark legal terms, the irrevocation of certain royal entitlements should Prince Harry breach defined thresholds of royal disengagement. The language was distant, clinical, and yet devastating. It spoke of precedents, of moral standing, of the limits of royal immunity. And it was entirely enforceable. Camilla read it again, and again. Her mind didn't race, it calculated. There was power here, not given to her but revealed to her. And once seen, it could not be unseen. She should have informed Charles. She didn't. She should have returned the document. She didn't. Instead, Camilla took a quiet breath and asked a single question: is this binding? The answer yes was all she needed. For a moment she allowed the possibility to bloom. This wasn't revenge. It was redirection, a way to protect the crown from within, a way to answer decades of criticism not with scandal but with statute. Still, beneath the calm, something darker stirred. Was she safeguarding the institution or settling old scores? The decision to keep the clause active was not taken lightly, but it was taken alone. No leaks, no signatures, just intent. And so, she had it copied, catalogued, and quietly secured in a secondary trust this time, under her own counsel. It wasn't time to act, not yet. But when the moment came, she would be ready. What she didn't realize was that someone else had been watching, and the next move wouldn't be hers alone. But Camilla knew she couldn't act alone, and what happened next revealed a web of loyalties, even he hadn't anticipated. He was Diana's firstborn, the one she trusted to protect the monarchy from itself. But when Camilla presented the clause to William in a private meeting, his reaction stunned even her, because what William said next changed the entire course of royal history. Camilla didn't summon him formally. It was arranged through discreet messages and a location that offered total privacy, no aides, no press, no documentation. When William entered the room, he expected another quiet conversation about institutional repair, perhaps another strategy session on public image. What he found instead was a document resting on a closed leather folder, and Camilla, looking more composed than usual, almost too composed. Without preamble, she handed it to him and said only, "It's from your mother." William's hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder, more from confusion than fear. But that changed the moment he began to read. The weight of the paper became heavier with each word. It wasn't just the language, it was the implication. This clause, this forgotten instruction from his mother, had survived. He thought it had been destroyed years ago, lost in the legal shuffle following her death. But here it was. And it was real. He didn't speak for a long time. Camilla watched him carefully, unsure whether she was witnessing fury or calculation. Finally, he looked up and asked the only question that mattered: "Does Harry know?" Camilla shook her head. "Not yet." William stared at T. He claws again, trying to reconcile two irreconcilable forces: his love for the brother he once protected, and his obligation to the institution that now stood on fragile ground. If Diana had written this, it meant she had envisioned this very moment. She had feared Harry might one day turn so far from the royal path that intervention would become necessary. But had she ever truly meant for the clause to be used? That's what haunted him. The conditions were precise: public abandonment of duty, formal rejection of constitutional obligation, damaging disclosures, and Harry, in his interviews, memoirs, and distance, had arguably crossed every line. But enforcing the clause meant triggering an irreversible fracture. William knew Harry wouldn't see it as duty, it would be seen as betrayal. That night, William returned to speak privately with Catherine. For the first time, he let her read the clause. She understood instantly what it meant, not just for the family, but for history. Catherine asked the question he hadn't voiced: "Would your mother have wanted this used against him?" William didn't answer. He couldn't. Days passed. Camilla waited. When William finally returned, he didn't bring royal advisors or solicitors, just a single sentence quietly delivered: "If this is used, it can't look like revenge." Camilla nodded, knowing full well that the line between justice and vengeance had already begun to blur. She now had the heir's implicit consent, not an endorsement, but a green light cloaked in caution. And in that moment, the power shifted, not just legally, but emotionally. Diana's clause was no longer a buried document. It was a live weapon. What none of them foresaw was that they weren't the only ones who had uncovered its existence. But before Camilla could make her move, someone else discovered the clause, and they weren't going to stay silent. When Meghan saw the clause, her world tilted. It wasn't just a technicality, it was a weapon pointed straight at her husband. And in a moment that shook royal corridors, Meghan confronted Camilla behind closed doors with words that left even the Queen consort stunned. It arrived in an unmarked envelope, slipped into her possession through a back channel she never revealed, not even to Harry. Meghan had long suspected that the palace was playing a deeper game, but what she read in Diana's claws made her skin crawl. It wasn't just a document. It was an executioner's blade, polished and sharpened under layers of royal protocol. The wording made it clear if Harry was deemed to have abandoned his obligations, his royal privileges could be rescinded. And more importantly, it left room for interpretation, dangerous room. Meghan's mind raced, not only because of the threat to Harry, but to their children. Archie and Lilibet's futures, their identities, their safety. Suddenly everything was fragile. She moved quickly, bypassing official channels and royal courtesies. This wasn't about diplomacy, it was about survivor. The confrontation with Camilla was swift, unannounced, and charged with fury. Behind a locked door, away from ears and optics, Meghan demanded answers. The accusation was simple but scolding. You waited for him to walk away, then you struck. Camilla remained composed, but her stillness wasn't serenity, it was defense. Meghan had seen enough behind palace walls to know when someone was calculating their next move. And yet Camilla didn't deny it. She simply stated, I didn't write the clause. Your mother-in-law did. It was a deflection cloaked in truth, and Meghan knew it. But it didn't matter who wrote it. What mattered was who intended to use it. The conversation, later leaked through anonymous sources, had been secretly recorded. No one ever confirmed by whom. Some believe Meghan did it for protection. Others suspect a palace insider with an agenda. But the contents revealed a chilling exchange. Meghan's voice, fierce, controlled, wounded, laying out the cost of activating the clause. You think stripping him will silence him? It will only make him louder. Camilla's reply was ice cold. Silence was never the goal. It wasn't an argument, it was a war of philosophies. One woman fighting to defend her family, another defending an institution she had waited decades to claim a seat in. Meghan didn't flinch. If this becomes public, she warned, you won't survive the fallout. Not in the court of public opinion. Camilla didn't respond. She didn't need to. The silence was its own message, a quiet refusal to be swayed by emotion. Meghan left that room not with peace, but with purpose. She knew now what she was up against. The monarchy wasn't passively watching Harry, it was preparing to act. And in the shadows of palace walls, battle lines were being drawn not just for titles or status, but for legacy itself. Meghan didn't care about crowns, but she would burn down a kingdom if it meant protecting her children. But Camilla wasn't backing down, and what came next was a move no one expected. It was the first midnight session of the Royal Council in over 40 years. No press, no public record. Just whispers, warnings, and one document, Princess Diana's claws, laid bare before the Crown's most ruthless gatekeepers. They were summoned without context, their instructions veiled in formality and urgency. No aides were permitted inside the chamber, no phones, just signatures, silence, and centuries of loyalty. Senior royals and trusted legal minds filed into a candlelit room beneath the palace's west wing, a location chosen specifically for its absence from official floor plans. There, on the long oak table, rested the clause, unfolded, exposed. The same clause that had already rattled William, enraged Meghan, and haunted Camilla. But this gathering wasn't for emotion, it was for judgment. Because what lay on that table wasn't merely a document, it was a detonator. Camilla did not lead the session, that role was deferred to the Chancellor of Royal Affairs, a man whose presence rarely pierced public life, but whose influence within the Crown was absolute. The discussion began with a legal reading, precise, uninterrupted, clinical. Then came the validation. The solicitors confirmed it, the clause was real, legally binding, and had never been officially rescinded. It carried Diana's signature. It carried institutional weight, and it carried consequences that could fracture the monarchy if unleashed. One chair remained conspicuously empty, Charles. His absence was explained as a measure of neutrality, but everyone in that room knew better. His silence was protection, perhaps even denial. He could not be seen as complicit in a decision that would devastate one son to preserve the other. So he stayed away, leaving the rest to sort the fallout. Princess Anne, unwavering and blunt, demanded immediate clarity. Either we uphold the structure or we surrender it. Her voice carried the sharp edge of decades spent defending tradition. Across from her, Prince Edward took a quieter stance. He questioned the wisdom of enforcement, not its legality. Do we protect the institution or the family? It was a line no one wanted to draw, but the room had already begun to divide. The debate turned brutal. Loyalty was weighed against precedent. Risk was measured against optics. Every royal in that chamber understood the danger if word leaked. If the public turned, the monarchy wouldn't just lose a son, it could lose its future. Yet, doing nothing came with its own price. The clause was a sleeping weapon. Leaving it dormant could be seen as weakness. Using it could be seen as bloodshed. There were no clean choices, only calculated outcomes. The vote was held in silence. No debate, no discussion, just raised hands and downcast eyes. The verdict, the clause would remain active, intact, and held in readiness, but it would not be publicized. Not yet. It was to be filed under sovereign privilege, retrievable only by consensus or command. A compromise masquerading as peace. The meeting ended without ceremony. No signatures were taken, no statements made, just the quiet closing of a door and the knowledge that a line had been crossed behind it. And as the royals disappeared back into shadowed corridors, none of them realized that Camilla had already moved beyond the council. The clause was only one piece of her plan. And the next move? That would never stay secret. But behind the scenes, Queen Camilla was already planning the next phase, and it wouldn't stay secret for long. It was supposed to be locked away forever. But when the press got hold of Diana's secret clause, headlines exploded, loyalties shattered, and one royal's future became a question mark overnight. And at the center of the storm, Camilla. The leak came without warning, no build-up, no breadcrumb trail. One morning, an explosive front-page exclusive appeared in a notorious tabloid, complete with a partial scan of the document and the unmistakable opening line, in the even T, that my second son abandons his royal duty. The media ignited like dry straw, and within hours, global headlines echoed with disbelief. The clause was real. Diana had written it, and someone close had let it slip into the hands of journalists. The implications were immediate and violent. Commentators labeled it a betrayal of Diana's legacy, while others praised its brilliance, calling it a mother's final line of defense. But one name kept appearing in the firestorm of speculation: Camilla. To the public, there was no question. She had motive, she had access, and she had silence. That silence became its own kind of confession. While the palace issued vague statements about ongoing inquiries, Camilla herself remained completely removed. No denial, no explanation, just a stony, calculated quiet that left everyone to draw their own conclusions. And they did. Within days, social media turned into a battleground. Hashtags like #DianaClause and #CamillaRevenge trended alongside viral clips dissecting every past interaction between Camilla, Harry, and Diana. The timing, the secrecy, the sudden resurgence of the clause, it all pointed to a calculated strike. And Camilla, for all her royal polish, had no visible defense. Bob Armgan acted swiftly. In a televised interview recorded just days after the leak, she sat across from a sympathetic host and delivered a line that split the narrative down the middle. Diana never meant to hurt her son. She meant to protect him. It was raw, emotional, and unflinching. She didn't name Camilla directly, but her implications rang louder than accusations. Meghan framed the clause as a mother's shield, not a sword, and painted the leak as a desecration, not a duty. Public polls began to shift. Sympathy toward Harry surged. Op-eds declared the clause a tragic misunderstanding, misused by those seeking power. For a fleeting moment, Harry was no longer the rebel. He was the victim of a legacy twisted against him. Inside the palace, tensions boiled. The royals scrambled to identify the leak. Some whispered that it had come from within William's camp, intended as a warning rather than a declaration. Others insisted it was Camilla's inner circle, desperate to tighten her grip on authority before Charles's reign waned. But the truth remained locked behind closed doors. And while Camilla offered nothing to the public, every day she stayed silent only deepened the mystery. Was she the architect of this chaos, or simply the one left standing in its wreckage? What became undeniable was the rupture. The clause had broken the illusion that the royal family could control its own past. It laid bare the fractures no crown could hide. And just when it seemed the storm had reached its peak, a new revelation was preparing to surface. One that would challenge not only how the clause was read, but why it was written at all. But even as the public raged, one final twist was about to emerge, and it would change everything they thought the why knew about Diana's intentions. For years, everyone assumed the clause was designed to punish Harry. But buried in Diana's second letter, one Camilla never saw, was a chilling revelation. The clause wasn't about Harry at all, it was about protecting him from something much darker. It surfaced quietly in the hands of a trusted friend of Diana's who had kept it sealed for decades. The envelope was simple, no legal markings, no fanfare, just her handwriting and a short note to be opened only if the clause is used. Inside was a letter, raw, unfiltered, and devastating. It revealed that the clause had been misinterpreted from the beginning. Diana had never written it as a threat, she had written it as a shield. A silent alarm built into the very machinery of royal law. Its purpose wasn't to punish Harry for leaving, it was to protect him if he was ever manipulated into staying. That was the truth no one had seen coming. The letter spoke of a fear Diana could barely name at the time. She wrote of the pressures Harry would face, the expectations, the possibility that his loyalty would be turned against him, that he might be paraded not as a son, but as a symbol. A figurehead used to cover sins and silence dissent. She wrote, "One day they will use his blood against him. If he tries to leave, they will threaten him with everything they can. So let this clause exist not to punish him, but to free him when they do." The words shattered the narrative that had taken hold. The clause was never a royal guillotine. It was an escape hatch, and no one, especially Camilla, had seen it for what it was. The revelation sent shockwaves through the palace. Camilla, for all her calculation and composure, was reportedly shaken when the second letter was read aloud during a private family summit. It recontextualized every move she had made. Her strategy now looked like exploitation. Her silence now reeked of misjudgment. The weight of the misunderstanding wasn't just political, it was personal. And for William, it landed like a final blow. He had agonized over the decision, torn between family and duty. And now, he realized he had been trying to interpret a warning from a mother that had been misread by everyone around her. In a moment of private grief, he reportedly whispered, "She was trying to save him, not punish him." The line stuck in the air like a confession no one knew they needed. Suddenly, the entire story changed. The public, once divided, began to coalesce around a new perspective. The clause wasn't the scandal, it was the safeguard. Diana wasn't the manipulator, she was the prophet. And Harry, long painted as the rebel, began to look more like the target of a system that had twisted a mother's protection into a weapon. Camilla's position grew fragile. Every move she had made now stood on foundations of misinterpretation. Every silent calculation exposed as a misfire. And yet, the damage was irreversible, because the clause had been activated. The machine had been set in motion, and there was no going back. But the damage was done, and now the crown faced a future it never anticipated. With Diana's clause exposed, the royals divided, and Camilla at the center of a firestorm, one question remains unanswered. Will the monarchy strip Harry of his royal status, or will they honor Diana's original intent and offer him redemption? In the aftermath of the second letter's revelation, the monarchy found itself facing a decision it was never meant to make publicly. Legal advisors split into factions. Some insisted the clause had lost enforceability the moment it was leaked. Others argued that its legality was intact, and therefore its activation remained within institutional rights. What none of them could answer was whether it should be used morally, politically, or publicly. The legalities had become secondary to the optics. The entire monarchy now stood under a microscope, every move broadcast and dissected. The clause was no longer a hidden safeguard, it was a test of power, of legacy, of blood. Amid the chaos, Harry broke his silence not through a televised statement, but through a cryptic post on his personal website. It featured a black and white image of Diana holding his hand, captioned with only 5 words, "She never left my side." No further explanation followed, but it didn't need one. The message resonated across the globe as both defiance and grief, a quiet refusal to accept the narrative that had formed around him. It wasn't a denial, but a declaration that he saw through the noise and still heard his mother's voice louder than the Crown's decree. Charles, meanwhile, retreated into silence. The king's lack of action was louder than any speech. Rumours swirled of private turmoil, of a father torn between crown and child, guilt and expectation. Some insiders claimed he'd vetoed any formal action against Harry. Others believed he'd handed the matter entirely to William to preserve his neutrality. Whatever the truth, the absence of his voice cast a long and complicated shadow, especially as Camilla's role continued to dominate headlines. In courtrooms and closed-door meetings, she was confident, calculated, every inch the queen consort. But in public perception, her image was scorched, her motives questioned, her legacy already tainted. She hadn't written the clause, but she had wielded it, and the cost of that choice was now irreversible. For William, the line between duty and brotherhood had never felt thinner. He stood on a knife's edge, one foot in tradition, the other in regret. Those closest to him say he considered reaching out an unrecorded call, a private conversation, even a quiet walk toward reconciliation. But something always stopped him: the weight of the crown, the responsibility to uphold what Diana herself had set in motion. And yet, even he could feel the irony. In trying to follow her written will, they had all lost sight of her spoken one. Behind closed palace doors, murmurs of the future had already begun. Insiders whispered of a new clause being drafted this time for George, a revised, modernized version of Diana's safeguard, designed not to control, but to protect. A recognition that the institution must adapt or decay. Whether that clause will see the light of day remains unknown, but its mere existence proves one thing: the monarchy no longer trusts its own blood to be loyal without conditions. And as the monarchy teeters between loyalty, legacy, and law, one thing is clear: Diana's voice still echoes through the walls of power. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.